Well, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be reading and discussing with you some material I wrote in 1981 that you can find in issue 4, 1981 of the source. This is on the Sun Temple, or rather the Sun Grail, as Thoth calls it, atop the Mesa Verde Plateau, ruins left by the Anastasi. But let me give you a little back information on this first. In 1980, I was guided by my sources for my mother and I to move to Cortez, Colorado, where I believe we stayed 2 years. And I was there to work with the energies, the very unique dynamics of the Mesa Verde Plateau. And this is very close to the Four Corners area, and in fact, it is in the Four Corners medicine wheel. It is the inner ring of the medicine wheel, and ironically, here in Crestone, Colorado, is in the outer ring of the medicine wheel. And by that, it's not just where 4 states come together, the Four Corners. It's just that, that is something that took place as energetically, as a result of the fact that that is the sacred knot, as Thoth calls it, of the North American part of the continent, the world. There's a whole story about that, but we won't be going into all of that here. However, the Mesa Verde Plateau is extremely significant on the planet. It's not one of the chakras of the Ascension Temple, but it's equally as important. It's the meridian, but not the meridian, the middle ground, the middle plateau between the ascending and descending plateaus. And I always get this wrong because of my dyslexia. If I have to choose between ascending and descending, which is which, but I believe that the Tibetan Himalayas, I used to call them Himalayas, but I'm trying to get it more sophisticated now. The Tibetan Himalayas are the ascending, and the Altiplano of Peru is the descending. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that's correct. Excuse me, I'm adjusting my headset for just a moment. There. So anyway, so Mesa Verde Plateau is what the sacred knot, which connects the two, and there's a whole kind of energetic function that has to do with the lunar and solar shells of the planet, and all kinds of science that goes and that is involved in that. So when I was asked to move there, it was because I was to work with this very important plateau. Now, I have mixed feelings about, I don't know if it's mixed feelings or just questions, unanswered questions in my own being that I really haven't reconciled yet. It's not like I can ask those just anything and get instantly an answer. That's not the way it works, especially about things that relate to me. So is it because I don't think it's a lack of sociability or even a desire possibly to communicate those things, but if I have a conflict about something, I need to work it out. He will give me certain answers, certain tips, certain helps about things, but I'm not those little robots. I have a life and learning processes going on in that life. So he doesn't interfere with that. Of course, there are other things that he flat out won't tell me because they're just not in my periphery of need to know. That's, a whole other topic. But this kind of thing is because I have a conflict about it. That's probably what it is. And I'm going into this because I really need to relate it if I'm going to talk about all this that I did then and the work that I did with him. In general, for all light workers, when we do these things, we need to form a balance in our being about it. We are not the ones that are making all these differences. Yes, we are playing a role and we're honored to do so. But it comes from a higher directive. And we're really acting as a biogenetic link to that associative process. And I just want to make that clear because, again, for me personally, I tend to go, oh, well, I don't want to talk about these things because it makes me sound like I'm, this wizard that's going around and fixing all these things, which is, of course, not true. So I think I feel a lot better about it as I'm talking about it now. I'm on my little couch. But I think it's because I just need to make that clear that we are acting as biogenetic links when we do these things. Okay, so now that that's settled, before I start with the actual article, just one more little thing, and this is prefacing it, and I don't know why I have this prefaced here. Oh, let's see. The Libyan master Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, that's what I used to call him, the Thoth Racemus part, who now dwells in the Templaric earth, projects a pyramid of light as a second light shell over my soul body's own natural bio-light pyramid. Well, I'd forgotten this. This is pretty cool. I'll have to keep that quote. Through this linking of light pyramids is filtered the hollow crystal paragrams from the recording crystals of Earth, that's the Akasha, into my consciousness spectrum. Okay, well, that's interesting. I will study that. So now I'm quoting from 480 of the source about Thoth saying some of the past lives he had. Well, I'm just going to skip through them. See Hiram-Abiff, the master builder under King Solomon. I remembered that one. And Amenhotep, the physician, the architect of Egyptian pharaohs of the Egyptian pharaoh Zoser. Yeah, I remembered that one. And Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, the emperor savior, the forefathers of the Aztec and Maya, and the legendary Hiawatha co-founder, together with the visionary prophet Degandamida of the League of the Iroquois. Yeah, I remember all of those. And also I remember that he defines his participation in the entity projections of John the Beloved and Enoch. Entity projections. I think what he's speaking about here, later he would call layering, that he's one of the layered souls of. Here he's referring to it as entity projections. And he says, I, the initiate, am integrated with Enoch, who was not incarnated man in the temporal sense, but is a radiant being who employed the temporary focus of a mortal form only. And John of Revelations, who was incarnated man, but also when upon the Isle of Patmos was the mouthpiece of Enoch. Now, Thoth has since said that he's also John the Beloved, or one of the layered souls thereof. So, and I think that he has told me that they are both the same, John of Revelations, John of Beloved. Now, yes, he has, in fact, but I don't know if they were two separate incarnations, the same soul or souls, or they were the same physical incarnation. I tend to think that he means they were the same physical incarnation. But these things are so complex sometimes when you try to sort them all out with little human mammalian brains, when this is really operating on a much higher level, all this incarnated stuff and all of that. So I don't know. But anyway, I thought that was interesting, so I just put it in there. But now we're going to begin with, on September 2nd, 1981, I received a consignment from the initiate. Thoth used to call himself to me the initiate, which reads in part. Now, here we go with all this biblical sounding talk. And even in this issue, I'm apologizing for it, but it's embarrassing almost for me to read the way it was set down in those days. Whenever Thoth spoke to me, not true of my sciences, not true of anything else I got out of the Akasha, unless I was quoting from some ancient book or something. But when Thoth spoke to me, he got so flowery with all these and thous and those, which disappeared after a while. Now, was it my brain that was turning it into this flowery stuff? I really don't think so, because none of my other writing was like that. So I don't know why it came through like that. But at the time, even though I was embarrassed then about it, I felt like I shouldn't change it, I mean, it was what I got. So I just went ahead and put it that way. So here we go. Goest thou unto the ramparts of the lion, to the summit of the emerald table. He used to call Mesavedede the emerald table. To the palace of the sun, wherein resideth the bonding flame. As a vision quest, the revelations of ages, so thee will be made witness to the ether records bonded to stone. They wait to speak to the initiated, it's me in this instance, on wings of gold, hence life to be breathed from the mouth of the lion, as the word uttereth from the ageless keeping of the tongues of signs, sounds, and sights. Whoa. The place of the sun temple is the homing ground where the Helios met their brethren of the blue madras in the first day. Now, he's speaking here of the migrations, and we're going to touch on that in a bit. But the migrations of the Solarians, well, there were a lot of different star migrations to the planet eons and eons ago. And the Helios, he's speaking of the sun lords. Well, not the sun lords, but the sun people. And that is the Solarians. A whole nother topic, but there's a lot of Solarians on Earth, and I apparently am one of them. But there's a lot of different star families. This is just talking about the Solarians who are from the blue star Rigel. In the first day, the brethren, as it says, where the Helios met their brethren of the blue madras. The blue madras, let's see, how does that go? That's a whole bunch of migrators that he calls the blue madras. In the first day, it is thy assignment to bring forth the keys of the burning record, the telos ahambra, telos ahambra. Take the crystals, the Herkimer diamond quartz. These crystals are the most pure and potent to come out of the earth that are now being mined. Well, that was in 1981, so there's more that are even more pure since then. But at the time, they were really hot stuff. It is upon this ground, Herkimer, that the ultra being Moroni dipped his staff into angelic light and thereby charged the quartz with the host. That's Herkimer, New York. So, that's what he's saying. This is all so symbolic. You have to kind of be with that to say, what in the world does he really mean here? These stones, which are taken to the sun temple of the Mesavedede, will undergo an energy transformation and be attuned to the archangelic chrysalis that is received through the sacred knot of the emerald table. These infused crystals will be imbued with the pure streaming of the angelic and nature spirit energies as they pour through the resonating planet. Now, little Maya, or Christine at the time, taking a bunch of crystals up there, the Mesavedede, is hardly the whole picture. Bear that in mind. There's something really bigger going on. I'm acting as this little tiny bioenergetic transducer that's part of a zillion other little transducers all working together to create whatever this is that he's talking about that I still don't know because it's too symbolic to figure out. But it's one little key that goes into the bigger picture. Now I lost my place. Let's see. Okay. The following quotations are from Secret Places of the Lion by George Hunt Williamson. Now this is George speaking here. The great sun temple at Mesavedede, which has long been an enigma to archaeologists, was built to commemorate the coming of the sun ship to the Indian people. Their legends today state that when some of their people learned to make weapons of lightning, they constructed this unusual temple. Inside the sun temple are two round structures which are spoken of in legends. And this is the legend he's quoting, so this is a quote within the quote. The gods with weapons of lightning assembled in one structure, while the mortals with ordinary weapons assembled in the other. And then he continues to say, No, he doesn't. There's so many inner quotes in here, I don't know, but I'm just going to read it all. At one corner of the Sun Temple, visitors to the ruins in Mesa Verde can still observe a strange symbol in the rock. It appears to be a natural formation, yet it looks like a rayed sun disk. This is the exact spot where the great sun ship landed in the 13th century AD. The disk and its rays were created by the force field of the ship. It was done deliberately so that a marker might be established at this location. Holes drilled in the center of the rock disk are still visible today and were used along with wooden pegs to determine certain sun positions. Now, I think I saw one of those pictures when I was looking just yesterday through pictures to find one that I made this artwork here with my avatar. Anyway, it says, so that's the end of, okay, that's the end of George Williamson's Hunt Williamson? George William Hunt Williamson's quote, yes. So now I go back to talking. My sources have told me that long before the sun ship mentioned in the quotations above impressed the seal of the sun into the earth, Mesa Verde was the place where those from the blue star in Orion emerged from the center of the earth, where they have zionically beamed, to meet others from the blue star who arrived in light vesicas, supernally born photonic matrices from the carriage of ensouled ultra-physical beings, such as those who were the Helios from above and blue madras from below. It was here in the time before the Adamic race, that the Helios and the madras were united once again. And what this means is the Adamic template that's created by the 9 sun spirits. I didn't know this when I wrote this here about the 9 sun spirits, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of time here. So the Adamic race is we have the Adam Kadmon template, and the Adam Kadmon template was created by the 9 sun spirits. And of those 9, remember I just recently wrote about the 9 sun spirits in more detail. We have the Thoth soul, the Assyrian soul, the pure soul of Jesus, because the Assyrian soul was the secondary soul of Jesus. And we have, well, those 3, and then there are these others of the 9 that have never been incarnated on the planet, period. So that's what's talking about there when it says, here we are. It was here in the time before the Adamic race. So this is before the Adam Kadmos template had created a race of people on the physical earth. They were already involved in a certain form of experience, but not what we understand as the physical earth yet, probably in the lotus reality. So to leave that and to continue, these master builders, remember I was speaking about how the sun spirits became master build. How does that go now? Oh, let me see. Oh well, let's not try to get into that at the moment. These master builders placed the first of the geodetic markers in the holy ground where now stands the Sun Temple, directly under the spot where the later craft from Venus would impress the sun disk. So this is the master builders come out of the Sunbow clan. The Sunbows are the first boots on the ground guys on the physical earth, checking it out, okay, because they had their own kind of mission involved, but the beings from the lotus hadn't descended into the physical earth yet. The geodetic markers, 33 in all, were embedded in areas around the world, marking the major temple structures of the first layer of the earth temple, there being several layers in the total design. The sun disk earth markers are also send tonal signals into space on a frequency accessible only to the more luminous ensoulments. Boy, those are made-up words. Well, Thothic made-up words. Since the location of the Sun Temple on the resonating plateau disk of Mesavedity is a homing ground, many landings have occurred there in the ancient past. You know, the other day when I found all those letters from George Lawrence, the inventor of the world's first laser engine, who communicated with me back in 1971 through 74, which I recently put out there on my website. I was looking through all those files, and I also came across the symbols of the 33 geodetic markers, which Thoth had given me, that I had some artist, because in those days I didn't have, computer software that I could do it with, and I wasn't going to try to do it. So I had a friend who did it for free draw these symbols, which are very simple. They're lines and dots, is basically all they are. But it's really interesting, and he put them in gold and everything. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to photograph that with my, Android, and take those images and do something with them, maybe bring them forth again. After all, he gave them to me to put out there, and it never happened. Many things never happened, not because of Thoth, but because of me and my life that was ongoing at the time. So maybe I will do that. Anyway, to continue, let me get a sip of tea here. On the linear date of September 20th, 1981, September 22nd being the autumnal equinox, I and two associates, well, one of them was my mother, and the other was my dear friend, Kip Davidson, who is no longer on this planet, journeyed, as instructed by the initiate Thoth, to the Sun Palace of the Emerald Table. In order to transfer the keys of the burning record, I took with me cameras and a small portable synthesizer upon which I would strike tonal concordances to the ether records bonding the aura of the temple. The photographs taken, well, I don't have those here, of the bonded stone would serve as a photon charge to release the heliograms impressed through the guardian powers upon the stone mass centuries ago. Now, I'm thinking I probably took my Polaroid, because Thoth was really into Polaroids in those days, because he said the emulsification of the images instantly on the print like that, caused certain energy things to be captured along with the image. I don't think they even make Polaroid cameras anymore, but it would really be interesting if they did, because I think they would serve a purpose in this kind of work that, our fancy Androids and iPhones and all of the cameras that do all the digital stuff really can't do, because this emulsification literally captures that into the element of the image. So anyway, where am I? Okay. Upon reaching the imprint of the sun disk, which my sources more often refer to as the sun Grail, set in an altar on the outside wall of the Sun Temple. Boy, that's what that picture is. I think I'm going to look that up and show it to you in just a sec. At an approximate western angle, I placed the crystals into the concave of the imprint. Here they were infused with the emerald fire. I still have those crystals, and they're on one of my altars. I think I should move them and put them on the main altar. I found the circular and roofless temple to be sealed with a labyrinth of concentric ether rings, each ring a balanced charge from the other, an etheric blueprint of the 9 levels or layers of initiation of Zionic passage infused into the earth mass of the planet. From the inner to the outer world, I was guided by one of the guardians who oversees my light work, Burning Man, shamagician of the medicine societies of the Central Earth tribes. He led me and my companions through an invisible passageway before I physically entered the temple. Turning page. And there is a helix of light pyramids running in spiraled symmetry clockwise through one of the two inner circles in the temple, and counterclockwise through the other. This is the electronic red ray charge left-brained clockwise. The well, then let's see. I don't know where the other one would be, but anyway, I'll keep going. The outer wall, upon which is appended the altar with the sun grail, and beneath its geodetic marker, serves as the shield of neutronic balance. Above the temple and its immediate grounds, the aura canopy filters the streaming etheric light of the morphi, the eternal and supernal light which infuses all creation, the Kabbalistic Ein Sof, through an invisible lens of spectral holocristic prisms. Sorry, I read that so poorly. The result color light pattern rayed into the sun temple, the temple of the sun, is visible only to the etheric eye, or etheric sight. In the future generation of light, this heliogram will be seen by the visible sight of Earth's people. As I'm reading this, I'm receiving that this will be seen when we are all in the pyramidus radius frequency. Or most of us are. All of you probably are. There might be a few politicians that will be left out. The filtering of holograms within temples and other ancient sacred structures or natural creations is ascribed to certain keynote points where concordance of the higher light spheres is present. As I worked through the various energy sequences which I was instructed to perform, a hawk dipped and soared in circles above me in physical sight, a messenger from the culture holders of the Mesa. Yeah, I remember that. That was pretty cool. Now, before I continue, I just have to tell you an aside here that is very humorous. My dear friend and spiritual brother, Kip, who was a very elegant young man, elegant in the true born elegance, not put on elegance. And probably he was, I don't know, probably 34, 35 at the time, maybe not even that old. He was very, as I said, very elegant speaker, and just ability to just be connected to people in this very impressive way. So he's very tall too, and very nice looking, which didn't hurt. So we were standing there, my mother and myself and Kip, and I was just getting ready to do this, and there was nobody there when a whole little gaggle of tourists came up, and they were alone. They didn't have a tour guide or anything, with their cameras and their little floppy hats and their, and they were all just, looking around and talking, and we looked at each other like, oh no, because we had a timing with this thing. Kip said, let me handle this. He walked over and said, hello, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. And he acted like he was a tour guide. He didn't say he was a tour guide, but I mean, he was just so in the know and so elegant and so there, and they were all like, oh, where did you come from? But they didn't say anything. They were just like totally transfixed with Kip, And he just led them around. He showed them just a little bit about the Sun Temple. He talked about it like he knew everything in the world about it. I don't remember what he said, but it was very impressive. And I don't think he was, saying something untrue, but he just had his way about making small things sound really big. So he said everything that he needed to say, and then he just and down here, and he took them off. So Kip missed the ceremony, but he was there for a very important purpose. He just led them off, and they led down. Now here we have, and they went off into the sunset with Kip, totally transfixed. So then my mother and I remained, and I was able to do the ceremony in total silence. Well, silence of the maddening crowd. Okay, silence from the maddening crowd. So I'm saying now, back to my article. What was accomplished during that time atop the Mesa had been coded and transferred through morphic light into the crystal pyramid grown or manifested within an icosahedron faceted crystallic chamber beneath the mount of, oh boy, Miuthram, the Ute Mountain near the Mesa Verde Plateau. This chamber, in addition to the Solitaria, whatever that is, Solitaria complex, beneath the Mesa, yes. So I read that very poorly, I'm sorry, but underneath the Mesa is this Solitaria inner earth type cavern complex. And it says refers to issue 380, so I don't remember it, so whatever it is. And the Ute Mountain was like, the sleeping giant on Kauai. It was an Indian, in this case, sleeping, on the mountain. And so the crystal pyramid or tetrahedron was revealed to me through remote viewing, etherically. I didn't know I knew the word remote viewing in those days. Tiny rainbow-like grids can be seen in its pure crystal mass and opalescent refractions, changing with the perspective of the viewer. These paragrammic grids contain the encoded knowledges which are being stored within the pyramid. The crystal tetrahedron, fully activated on October 27, 1981, is assigned the name Oakes Tau. Oakes is a tonal paragram, meaning knowing that it is, or knowledge that is fountained within the soul. It's actually, most people pronounce it Oakes. I've probably been pronouncing it wrong all this time. I don't know. Oakes is what I always said. It's Oahques. Tau, the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is the ancient T-cross, the Masonic symbol of the T-square, or the Taurus bull of Orion. The master hammer of Sha'Maia-NEAAF and the caduceus of Hermes, both incarnates of the initiate. The Tau cross, with the sign given by the Lord to the people of Jerusalem to mark upon their foreheads, as related by the prophet Ezekiel. It is also a symbol of the Humanity Pact among equilibriant worlds, those worlds which carry the same genetic ancestry as Earth. So what I'm now just referring to as our kindred is actually, there are among the humanity. The kindred are those who have taken the Humanity Pact among equilibriant worlds. So they are the beings of the equilibriant worlds. As I was retyping this material for the source from Rough Draft, I came across an interesting passage in Corinne Helene's The Bible and the Tarot concerning the Tau underlinings mind. Well, you're not going to see the underlinings, but here we go. Now, this is from Corinne Helene's Bible interpretation in the Bible and the Tarot. Apocryphal Masonic legends ascribe the Book of Tau and the symbolic T to Methuselah, the descendant of Cain. I wonder if that's Methuselah, the fellow that's supposed to live forever, probably. As we reviewed the story of Sha'Maia-NEAAF, the master architect of Solomon's temple, who plunged through the raging molten sea to the center of the earth, where he met his ancestor Tubal-Cain and received from him a disc and hammer, with which he returned to the surface of the earth and completed his masterpiece. Rosicrucian legends state that Hiram-NEAAF was reborn as Lazarus, taking the name of John in initiation and becoming the author of the fourth gospel, 4, and therefore 400, the number of Tau, which is 4 raised to a supernal plane, relates to the number of the planet Earth. When Hiram arose from Earth's center, he became the rose and the cross. The wonderful books of Tau recorded the history of the sons of fire and detailed all of their wondrous wisdom and their secrets of the arts, crafts, and sciences, including also those deep mysteries pertaining to Earth's center, into which Hiram had been initiated by Tubal-Cain. In esoteric Christianity, Tau is the Christ. I'm sorry. Let me read that again. This is really old, and the printing is even harder for me to read than usual. In esoteric Christianity, the Tau, is the Christ ray, which penetrates to the core of the planet Earth. And when the 3x3 initiate has gone through the 9 lesser mysteries founded by Hermes Trismegistus, that's Thoth, he is joined to the liberator and is released from the wheel of death and rebirth. For at the center of the wheel, there is rest. The central earth mysteries are symbolized geometrically in the point, the square, and the circle, all drawn in one figure. And that's the end of quotations from Korean Helene. The Sun Temple is positioned atop the mesa, near the rim of a narrow canyon, cutting through a portion of the plateau, where within viewing distance of the temple, on the same western facing of the canyon wall, Burning Man showed me the sacred mouth, or place of emergence, also referred to as the source. Now, this is why when I was brought to Messavidity that I started my publication, The Source. I was told that was part of what I was to do there at that point. And that was actually the first publication that I had. I wrote all these manuscripts, and I had Red Tree published, but I'm talking about something that continues, every month you put out an issue. It was from this stone door, this source, this emergence door, that the blue Madras emerged from the grips of darkness into the light of Atana, the solar sun. Now, I don't know why they would say grips of darkness if they were in the inner earth, but perhaps they had to go through the tunneling passage, or I don't know what that would refer to. In the present time frame, the only witness to this most ancient past is a large door outline, appearing to be the product of erosion. Next to the sacred mouth is an old Indian ruin called Sunset Ruins, as the rays of the setting sun strike this western flank of stone. The following was received from the initiate on November 11, 1980. In the communication, my spiritual cosmic earth heritage or spirit life heritage was being revealed to me. Let me see if I even want to read this. Well, I'll give it a go. The league of days crosseth thy hand. In thy palm houseth the star of David, which endureth as the star of Sophia, the star of Venus, the star of the Christos Magi. Ye did descend to earth from the blue star, passing through the crown chakra of the humming path. That's the Himalayas or Himalayas. I want to call them the Himalayas. And into the 9th layer, the 9 layers of the earth, to the interior of the Hopi-san planet. Earth, that's earth. There thou wast received by the Rose Solatan, the sun rose, which is also the sacred script, as the Atoma Raya, Atoma of inner light. Thou wast germinated within the golden rose as a seed of the sun's womb for 40 cycles in time. Then the family was given the command of the Raton, which called them upward from their silent dream of green pastures and still waters, from the land of the eternal sun. Yeah, well, that would be the inner earth. They left their dwelling of roses and mounted the stairway of the Atana path, the throat that opens to the outer solar sun. The company became the Blue Madra, family of the shepherd, also recorded as the Blue Star people. So my soul was one of the Blue Star people. These are all different, star families. We're all from different star families. You could have been from the Blue Madra, one of the others. Doesn't matter. They're all equally fabulous and wonderful and very illuminate, And so this is talking about me as being a member of this Madra family. They became known as the bearers of the flame, the fire people as well. The fire people entered into the first earth initiation as they ascended the Atana path. They traveled in darkness back through the 9 earth layers, which they had descended effortlessly in the beam. Returning on the upward path was tedious, with much unknowing in their hearts. Some members of the family chose to remain in the interior of the world. There were some who left the assemblage after the crossing of the Great Wall. The Great Wall, I have to sort of chuckle at that for a moment. Natural division between upper and lower portions of the planet. The remaining company proceeded through the total of the depth up through the lighted dimensions of the surface plateau to commune and give adoration to the messenger of the most holy, that messenger being the glorious Atana. That's the solar system sun. Atoma is the inner earth sun. But even the solar system sun has an Atoma in it. So here are the emerald table. Here on the emerald table, they erected the temple Atlanta, meaning shining of the solar angel. In the temple, turning page, Atlanta, each of the company of the Blue Mandra was given her designated design of life, his heritage. The thread woven of the cosmic fire by the angelic beings, the color set forth from the natural kingdom by the most sovereign of the cosmorphia. Each child of the sun did sew his own robes with the golden thread of the sacred colors. Well, obviously, we aren't all sitting there with the thread and needle in hand, and, sewing something. This is symbolically speaking of some kind of energetic weaving. Upon the surface world, the blue Mandras were met by the Helios in their ships of light. The Helios were also of the same shepherd family, but did not choose to go through the earth initiation, and were therefore not fire people, but air people, as they performed the carriage of the air element. All of the first assembly of the blue star who united again on the surface world from above and below were the Sunbow clan. Oh, okay, so this particular family, tribe, whatever, were the ones that had the first boots on the ground. After the clan had erected the temple Atlanta, the Helios continued to other points of the planet to place markers for future surface sites. The blue Mandras remained upon the emerald table. There were some exceptions, those who went with the Helios, to set up the law as it was given to them to do so. First, they made their robes in order that their history be woven and carried in ritual about their bodies in a second skin of new life. It would be very interesting to understand this from a scientific point of view, which I might try to do at some point. When the blue Mandras first saw the great Atana in the sky of the upper world, the Helios were there in the ships of light to meet them. As they were once again joined, the clan of the Sunbow was visited by the host of the Christos in the soul of the prince, the soul chosen to carry the many identities of Christ from Adam to Jesus. Now that would be the Orion, what I'm calling now, the Osiris sun spirit, not the pure soul, because he didn't go through the incarnation process, but Osiris did. So that's what they're speaking about here. Because I didn't know there were more than one. The Nithos didn't tell me till times later. When the temple Atlanta was built and the inner sanctum completed, the seed stone was placed therein and was grown to full dimension. That's interesting. It grows, so that's interesting. This accomplished, the second visitation occurred. The Christ soul took physical form this time, whereas the first visitation he had been consumed in light. This physical presence was radiant and not of the elemental flesh. The voice was like unto a bell. The host speaketh unto the temple assembly. I am the lamb of the shepherd. I place my seed unto hospice. I give the first of my kind unto you. Hospice? I know that is a place where people go to, transition. I'm not sure how he meant it. As he spoke these words, which were like a rising wake unto a steady shore, his seed was spiraled into the crystal stone, and the illumined therein, From the center of the fire, a living soul germinated, and in 12 cycles of the blue star was brought forth to live as one among the family of the shepherd. For they truly became from that time on. The child was known as Panther. I say Panther here with an E, but I think it was probably an A. Anyway, Panther. This then was the first living flame of the Christos of the earth, even before the time of Adam, although this was not a karmic one, as would be the Adamic generation. I'm still assuming that this is the Osiris soul. And then I say now, as translator of the above transcript, I feel I need to make several remarks concerning it. And then I go into, an apology because the language is so flowery that I just made. So I will spare you that again. Okay, then I say, once again, as I arrived at this portion of the issue, while retyping from Rough Draft, I was guided to read in Corinne Helene's New Bible Interpretation, New Testament, Volume 4, from which I had not read previously. The following pages in this volume strikingly pertain to the family of the shepherd mentioned in the 11-11-80 message from the initiate that I just read you. Okay, so from Volume 4, and I'm quoting here from Corinne Helene. When the sun last passed through Taurus at the vernal equinox and was approaching the cusp of Aries, the sign of the Lamb, about 2000 BC, there appeared in Egypt a new order of rulership among HYDSOS, or shepherd kings. Well, I spelled that wrong because there should be a Y there. It's the Hyksos, or shepherd kings, invaders from Arabia. Manthos, the famous and wise historian, tells us that these kings ruled for many years and that Egypt was indebted to them for much useful knowledge and great expansion or artistic endeavor. According to an obscure tradition, the mystic shepherd kings, after their expulsion from Egypt, gathered in a certain place named Avaris and remained there for a time, the Egyptians being unable to dislodge them. Later they passed through the wilderness into Syria and to a country now known as Judea, where they erected a city afterwards called Salem, and where much later Melchizedek bestowed upon Abraham the mystic rights of the order. This city became known later as Jerusalem, the holy spot that for thousands of years has been impregnated with mighty spiritual forces generated by wise and holy men in preparation for the coming of the Christ Jesus. Now that's the end of the quote. And then I say, according to the recording crystals, that's the Akasha, the Melchizedek mentioned in the scriptures is the title of office carried by a master teacher from the order of Melchizedek, and not the name of the man himself. The shepherd kings we find in the crystal records, that's the Akasha, as the Solarian sun race. And it says, see Phoenix of the Sapphire or Sapphire series tape list. Well, so I want to pause just a moment and say that in my recent writing, I was talking about this, when I'm talking about the sun spirits, this is what I just wrote about Thoth as Ushael, the sun spirits in the Akhenaten, and Nefertiti out of the, I can't think of the name of what I just wrote right now, but you know what I'm talking about if you've read that, which I just put out. Anyway, in that, I'm revealing that Akhenaten was the last of the sun kings in a rulership position. So he came out of the Hyksos tribe, but he was also a very ultra being. Now, I write about the Hyksos in more detail many years later and what their role was. And they were all, imbued with this sun temple, this sun lord genetics, some more than others. And they had actually founded, they were the keepers that founded the whole area in Egypt that they left in with others to guard that area. And they weren't Hyksos. When they came back, the guards said, you can't have it back. It's ours now. And that's why they had that little war because of that. But it wasn't as terrible a war as we have these days because the Hyksos said, okay, we're not doing this. We're not going to get into this really bad fight with you guys. So after a time, they said, we're just leaving. So they went elsewhere. I'm making it very simplified, but that's the gist of it. And of course, Melchizedek, we have the Venusian, the first Lord Melchizedek was the Venusian who came to Mu and descended through the gate of Venus from the blue star and established the 7 heaven houses. Out of that came the Grail family, went to Atlantis. The Grail family then went to, or the Mazur part of the main part of the Grail family went to, which is now the Canary Islands, and established the Guanche kings, and then they went on to, into Europe, and out of that came the House of David and Yeshua and all of that. So to continue here in issue 1981 issue of the source. Upon my journey to the Emerald Table to bring forth the keys of the burning record, I was given the assignment of inscribing these keys to word and symbol in a book titled The Tarot Keys of the Initiate. Well, I didn't write, all I wrote in the Tarot Keys of the Initiate that I was given to do was just the major arcana. And I do have, a little rough draft of this material that I wrote. It never became an actual book. Maybe I should do that, There's so much of maybe I should do, and at this stage in my life, I doubt they're all going to get done. In any case, I'm quoting here from the text. The card keys of the initiate offer to the individual seeker a power grid through which he or she may charge their memory centers and connect with the light Morphi, the Kabbalistic Ein Sof, that great field of divine light penetrating and directing all creation, flowing from the mouth of the source. These flamed power codes have been integrated in this text with the tarot deck. They didn't necessarily have to be integrated with the tarot deck. They could have come forth in another manner. And I think I found that very limiting in a way, and that's why I didn't do much more with it. It was as if I needed to make an adjustment of some kind, which didn't happen. Each key possesses a mantramic word or power issued through the foci of the morphionic planetary resonance. When I'm speaking about this morphionic planetary resonance and all this morphi, I think I'm talking about the morphogenetic field, that scientists talk about. I think that's what it is. And I don't think I knew about it then, but I think that's what is being referenced. Or it's coming out of that, maybe a higher aspect of that or something. But, excuse me, a little drink of tea here. Let me find my place now. Above each mantragram is printed flames of the yod. Yod is the 10th and last letter of the first series of 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. It is far more than a symbol, possessing the morphionic charge of mankind's inner spiritual sun, the atoma, or centering of light. Through the guided placement of the card keys of the initiate via the tarot deck, these yod-flamed mantragrams will trigger within the participant of the inner fire, within the let me try that again. Through the guided placement of the card keys of the initiate via the tarot deck, These yod-flamed mantragrams will trigger within the participant the inner fire of the Sephiroth, the Kabbalic tree. The placements of the tarot cards in the geometric patterns of the 5 sacred solids registers the charge of each form as a crystal energy. It is therefore more than a means of divination or discernment events, but acts as a metamorphic matrix for the dynamic static charges of, the universe within the holistic body of man. The astral flames of each key in the initiate tarot is bonded to a vibratory degree of the astrophysical. The astrochemical valency is registered in the number form of the key. Thus, as the card keys are placed in a sequence by the neural impulse command of the seeker, or medium personage acting for the seeker, that individual is creating a bonding of the astrophysical self of the seeker to the morphi, the creative light issuing from the source. Maybe I better take a look at what I wrote on these things. What are they called? The keys, the card keys of the initiate? Yeah, I have them in a file somewhere. All of a sudden, I'm taking a keen interest. Let's see. The mantramic syllables of the initiate keys are of an ancient order. They are from the sacred mantras of the Lemurian Melchizedek. That would be the Lord Melchizedek that I was talking to you about. The Melchizedek mantragrams were chosen because they are from the books of the lost language, from which the sacred key languages of the earth were derived. While these card keys bear the flames of power, they are attuned only to the higher spiritual order and cannot be used for negative disharmonic purposes. The morphionic emerald seal is impressed upon the tarot keys of the initiate, that's what they would call, which would cause any misuse of these keys to be turned back upon the user of the ill-conceived employment. Yeah. So to continue, I'm saying after the date of October 27th, when the Orkes Tau pyramid was fully energized and activated, I began to be received into a higher consciousness state during sleep, in which I was surrounded with illuminaries who infused my mind with specific knowledge quanta being directed through the OT crystal pyramid, that's what I'm calling it here, within the mountain, and then radiated toward my thought centers. The OT pyramid segments the pure energy of the knowledge beam into pure radial color sonic layers of omnidirectional bands. The OT is, on a smaller scale, duplicating the actions of the universal centering, encoding, integrating of the morphi as it passes through the pure radial stargate. These pyroconic engrams filter through the Earth's consciousness spectra, integrating with minds uplifted to receive the paragrams, pictosonic ideograms, sequenced into our cerebral focus via critical rotational positioning, or CRPs, of our brain-mind complex. Well, anyway, if you followed that, you're a better person than I am. The OT crystal has now been positioned let me try that again. The OT crystal has now been positioned to act as a further filter and integrator for all high energy knowledge sources, whether directly from the most illuminate level of the universal spectra or the hybrid crystals created by higher intelligences operating for the spiritual good of the planet. The natural recording crystals of the earth, again the Akasha, also contain ultra layers too powerful for direct receipt in this time frame. Well, now that would be, the higher Akasha and the supra. Well, the supra Akasha, you can access the higher Akasha, but the supra Akasha, which were terms later given to me to reference this. The Earth is now entering a far less stable spectra field within the charging etheric envelope of the planet, as we pass through PHEA 3, PHEA-3, phasar entropic acceleration, which is a gear to a higher planetary frequency. This particular gear will peak in 1982 and be sustained through 1984. After 1984, there will be a period of greater stability for those who will accept the frequency change during PHEA 3. However, from the present point to in 1981 to mid-1982, there will be an increase in frequency breakdowns. Excuse me, I'm going to need a throat fix here. Let me try it again. There will be an increase in frequency breakdowns as the other old etheric charge is dissipated and the new one is organized about the Earth. From mid-1982 through 1984, this entropy of the old ether canopy or envelope will be at its zenith, although acceleration will have ceased. Thus, during the period 81, 84, in order that the highest levels of knowledge of the seventh seal, which we as Earth participators are able to receive, be given forth to our planetary zone, there must be established in the Earth special conductors of thought crystal grids entrained to the light transport of common synthesis to act as stabilizing pure nodes. Through the OT, this region will be an essential coupling frequency for the light transport of the greater universal intelligences, and their crystallic Earth grid will be able to maintain its parity of dynamic intrafields with the pararadial program for this planet as a light sphere. Well, there are so many off-grid words in this thing that who knows what the meanings are at this point in time. I don't. I'd have to go back and, I mean, some of them I do, but I'd have to go back with both and ask, which I'm not going to here. Of course, nowadays what I do is I'd link all of these things on the, they would be on the web, and I'd link them to the definitions. But of course, I couldn't do that then, and I just didn't do anything other. So I don't know what it means. But anyway, for several nights in succession, I was brought into radiance with the pararidial focus of the OT crystal pyramid. I seemed suspended in a weightless atmosphere, surrounded by a black light screen, not merely darkness, but a screen of black, upon which three-dimensional energy fields were projected. This would be a computer, folks. At one point, floating soundlessly toward me until it was stationed above my face, was a triangular image of blue, an outline of three planes of symmetry, not a solid form. In its center, which was spatially open, there appeared to be two blue tetrahedrons, or perhaps octahedrons, as viewed from the top. These pyramidic images were interlocked, forming a six-pointed star. There was some movement or rotation within the axis of this star, causing the jettisoning of blue flames outward from the entire triangle. As I continued to witness this energy manifestation, I identified it as a light vehicle, we have to say nowadays a Merkaba, of knowledge communication, an intelligent factor of the total knowing. This entrancing form proceeded to face link with me to match its intelligence spectra with mine. Our physical bodies contain a complexly encoded light program that is composed of all quanta of illumined frequency reference from the nadir to the zenith, depending upon our individual levels of consciousness at the time. Our biolight programs are more polarized to a particular zone of that nadir zenith light pyramid, which we as in soul biosystems are the externalized product. Thus, in order to integrate its intelligence spectra with mine, the light vehicle had to deduce the common reciprocals of pure radials between its light program and mine. The interlinking procedure must be accomplished through the acupoints and lines of the human face. It is here that the entire body's light program is duplicated and receptive to interlinking. The human body, in this instance, is analogous to a door, the face to the keyhole. Oh, that's interesting. The next visual experience I consciously remember is seeing the letters of a sacred language, perhaps Hebrew, suspended as written passages against the blacklight screen. I was the one who, in motion now, gliding past the letters. These inscriptions were also of blue fire, and as I sailed past the pages, I could see the letters from different reference points, the side and the back, revealing the dimensional value of each. You know what this reminds me of? I've never actually seen from cover to cover all the Matrix movies, just pieces of them. And of course, they were made later than this. But it kind of reminds me of that inside the computer, you know? I knew these pages of inscription were a cosmic table of light mathematics. Each fire letter was a yodic increment of crystallic valency. As one penetrated knowledge, so the table of fire letters bonded that soul to a greater spectra of pure crystalline interaction with all principle and being. The acceleration of mind equals the entropy of light transport through into the next universe of morphionic creation. Experiences such as mine need not require a crystal pyramid in one's backyard. Any receptive, spiritually oriented individual is a candidate for ultralight communications. In my instance, the Orkes Tau is acting as an intermediate node, enabling me to receive and dispatch amounts of knowledge which I would not ordinarily have the strength to acquire and assimilate at such an accelerated pace. There will be noted throughout the world, both individually and on a larger scale, a rapid advancement of metaphysical processes in the near future in order to prepare the planet for Phaia 3 and beyond. Well, that's certainly happened, but you know, that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, in the sense of evolutionary speaking. Now, from Kilin's The Bible and the Tarot, I'm quoting again. The letters of the Hebrew alphabet were taken from the shape of constellations on the ecliptic and were thus letters of flame. And, turning page, the letter Yod remains as a witness to their creation from fire. Each individual letter of the Hebrew alphabet is a flame or combination of flames, similar to Yod. Yod signifies the number 10, which is the perfect number, the number of the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, who in their turn symbolizes the forces of spirit in operation. It has the conventional form of the free flame, the tips of which are sometimes called jots. Every letter is really made of yods or modified yods, together with large or diminished jots, J-O-T-S, and connecting lines. In very careful writing, this symbolic try that again. In very careful writing, this symbolic flame detail can be detected, and sometimes even in poor script or printing, it is shown in the tradition that the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet really initiate certain small asterisms of the zodiac, which they picture in miniature. Thus, the alphabet as a whole symbolizes light, but only a few of the letters reveal this in their present form, while the symbolic meaning still in our day dies under the veil of the mysteries, unquote. Now, we're actually coming toward the end, but not quite. We're getting into the migrations now. I just want to see how long. I'm not going to read all of it, actually, because it goes off into a little something else that's not relevant here. But I will read some of it. So here we go. There are souls on, let me start again. There are those souls who have lived and are now living upon the surface of the earth, who were incarnate into this planetary life cycle in the beginning of the first generation, the time before the Adamic race, which is called the Natali, meaning the time of the light. Well, I discussed about the migrations, and how the souls came in through the Blue Madras and the Helios. Of those first generation souls, there are various companies, each descending from a color-coded beam of the constellation of Orion. The first migrations descended upon the blue-white ray from the blue star. This was the migration told in the 11-11-80 message from the initiate that I read. The souls of the Natili, it's not the Talis. Oh, wait a minute. Natili, I think that's a typo. It's Natali, who are among us, have long ago been integrated into the Adamic race and are part of the planetary life wave, as are the central Earth dwellers, only the latter being on a higher vibratory frequency of that life wave. Most first-generation souls, while incarnate on the surface of the Earth, are not aware of their cosmic lineage. Some are, however. Many are knowledgeable of a special obligation and love of Earth and its people, although the reason for this deep emotion is lost to their consciousness. There are 10,500 souls on and in this planet who committed their being to this life wave in the time of the light and have since dedicated themselves as keepers of the flame to Earth. I must stress at this point that there are many enlightened souls on this planet other than the first generation souls. They have come to this orb from the constellations of living lights and lumen stations of governing light law of the universe in many epochs and eons of time. Each original assembly or grouping of enlightened souls has its lineage in the stars. There are those entities who originated on Earth from the commingling of the primal life wave of this planet and the sons of light. These many planetary souls, or Himelief, are not trapped in the lower impulse, but can progress into a universal consciousness. Yet it is a slower and more difficult task for them, as they are newer and less developed souls. We find these incarnates on Earth now as the violent strain of society. The Himelief are easily led by the fallen sons, or Lucifer, who are known by many names, Tamil-Neef, being the Lemurian Melchizedek nomenclature for them. We can now, I just skip to all of that and I just say my newest term for them, used to be Nephilim, but now I just go with archonically invested or something of that nature. They often integrate with the soul of a Himelief in order to instigate their evil purposes, as they are not able to directly incarnate on Earth, a planet too high in spiritual vibration for such retrograde coupling. I think those are the archons in and of themselves, if they can't incarnate directly. Anyway, there are other worlds and states of being further regressed than our own. Really? Oh, gosh. All enlightened souls of this earth are the light races, those who come from the terraces of the living lights. These souls have de-evolved since their first appearance on Earth. Thus, they are no longer godlike. They have their respective karmas to contend with and are bonded to the human condition. Yet they are definable by their above-average spiritual seeking and instinctive sense of justice and duty to the earth. While many of the new soul Himeliefs are involved in the major entropic currents of our times, some have managed to align themselves to a more or less neutral state or static zone. The first generation Natali migrational divisions. First migration, Blue Madras, 1,000 souls beamed into the center of the earth, 776 ascended to the surface in the first aeon. Helios, 500 souls who remained above the surface of the planet in morphionic light vesicas, vehicles of radiant light, extensions of the intelligences within, and who met the 776 Blue Madra emerging from the place of emergence on the emerald table, Nesaveddi. The Blue Madras and the Helios combined to form the Sunbow clan of 1,276 souls. Second migration, Yellow-Green Madras, 3,000 souls beamed into the center of the earth, of which 2,105 ascended in the first aeon. Third migration, Red Madras, 3,000 souls beamed into the center of the earth, of which 2,900 ascended in the first aeon. All souls of the three Madras of the first generation and Solarians. The remaining 3,000 Natali souls beamed to earth in smaller units. They too are Solarians. And again, we're dealing all of this this is just the first migrations that came to Earth and sort of set up shop. Like I said, boots on the ground. Doesn't make them superior to all the other light races that came in other times in other places. Everybody had their job, you know. Returning once again to the present, the Solarians have had, since the time of the light, many incarnations within the Earth and above it. Among the ultra-terrestrial guardians of the planet, as well as the numerous surface Earth experiences, their presence is always one of some degree of light service, for they gave a golden oath to serve this sphere when they descended from the El race of Orion. In the Hebrew Kabbalah, El, as in Eloah and Elohim, means God. They do not always fully succeed, nor do they always pass every test confronting them. Yet they house souls in the physical of a most ancient lineage from the living lights, to which their spirits are wedded eternally. The Solarians, as well as other light races, are beset upon by the agents of darkness, the Sha'Maia-NEAAF, which I think we're going to call archons here. These vestiges of fallen light seek power, a power of the elemental impulse plane, aligned to the mortality of man as a purely mental and elemental finite state. Consequently, these souls, imbued with a purpose of light, given by command of the hierarchical stations of living lights, must contend with the subversive and often violent tactics of the Sha'Maia-NEAAF, puppeted through the primal soul Hemaliefs. As a reflection of what has been revealed here, no, I'm not going to do that. That goes on and gives some examples and whatever, which I'm just going to skip right now. Well, I don't know. I'm just going to talk about it rather than read it all, because it's kind of interesting. I give an example, just 2, or maybe I give 3 souls. Actually, I only give 2 here. I could have given many more, but of examples of 2 Solarian souls of the blue-white migration rate. One I list is Anwar Sadat. Now, he had not been assassinated yet, I don't think. It was very close to the time when he was, though, who was the Egyptian president. And I give some of his past lives and whatever, and talk about him. And the other one I talk about is Elvis, is a Blu-ray Solarian soul. And of course, many of you know I've written a book, Elvis's spiritual beingness, and taken from direct statements he made to his friend Wanda June Hill, which are pretty powerful. But I did not know about that when I wrote this. In other words, this material is what my now friend Wanda Hill read, because I sent it to her because she published this book on Elvis and whatever, and I just sent it to her. And she read it and flipped and wrote me back that she had tapes, which she shared with me, of Elvis speaking about him being, his soul being from the Blue Star Rigel, the Blue Star Rigel, those words. And, quite a lot more. So this material where I'm writing about Elvis being a Blue Star Solarian was what triggered her to confide in me, send me the tapes that she didn't share with hardly anybody, and give me all the transcripts of the conversations on all these topics for me to write my book, which I wrote, The Blue Star. I call it Blue Star Love. And so this is what began that. But another really amazing thing here is about Anwar Sadat, because many years later, after I wrote this, in the 1990s, a woman who had read my pre-manuscript of the Blue Star Love book, which I called in Magi from the Blue Star. It had not been published yet, but it was in manuscript form. I don't know how she read it. I've forgotten how it got to her or whatever, but she lived in Washington, D.C., and she was a hostess, a diplomatic hostess in Washington. So she met bigwigs. And it was her job to escort them into places and, make them comfy and I don't know, all kinds of things, And she wrote me because she read this material too about Anwar Sadat and Elvis both being Blue Star Solarians. And she told me that she knew Anwar Sadat, she considered him a friend. He had come several times to the United States, and when they had actually struck up conversations together while sitting there waiting for whatever. The hostess had to, be there with the personage and wait till this room was ready or whatever. I don't know. But they would have just brief times to talk together, and they just had a really strong soul connection. Well, she was really, a huge admirer of Elvis. Okay. So one time they were sitting there talking, and she said, "Mr. Sadat, I just have to tell you that, I am a very strong admirer of Elvis Presley. And some of the things you say, and, I just feel this resonance with him that I have with you. I can't explain it, but I feel there's some connection between you and Elvis." Now, I'm paraphrasing, but I wish I could find her letters because I do have them somewhere. And he said he leaned over, put his hand on her hand. He leaned over to her and said, "Well, Elvis and I come from the same star." She swore to me that he said that to her. And I had a lot of correspondence with this woman. She was not a flake. I believed her when she said she was a diplomat. She had a presence about her, and this is what she told me. So, chill factor. So anyway, I do have, in ending all of this, let me see if there's something else I want to add about that. I'm just going to go ahead and end it with this since we're speaking of Anwar and Elvis. And Anwar El Sadat, EL, Elvis Aaron Presley, the EL, the L race, the Solarians. So from Anwar El Sadat, this is a quote, and I believe it's from a book that he wrote. "Without a vocation, man's existence would be meaningless. We have been created to bear the responsibility God has entrusted with us. Though different, each man should fulfill his special vocation and shoulder his individual responsibility. To do this, he would first recognize and be loyal to his real entity within, regardless of any external factor. For it is this alone, that's a typo, which will enable him to belong and owe allegiance to that entity, capital E, which is greater, vaster, and more permanent than his individual self. God created you, shaped your soul, breathed his spirit into you, and charged you with his responsibility. He is love limitless and benightly infinite, and he wants the life he created to be inspired with a sense of humor, beauty, and strength. It appears that knowledge of a man's spiritual life are intimately related and influence one another. The more knowledge you acquire, the more mature your spiritual life, and consequently, the higher the quality of your knowledge becomes. It is an incessant process which helps man enhance his self-knowledge, and the clearer his vision of himself, the easier it will be for him to transcend the confines of the self and release his feelings, thoughts, and actions from the cell of personal concerns to direct them toward perfection and beauty. Love is the only force capable of pulling down the barriers which may stand between matter and spirit, between the visible and the invisible, between the individual and God. Without love, we fail to recognize the otherness of others, and so fail to communicate, losing ourselves by stifling the self within its own narrow confines. To preserve his entity as a human being, a man should maintain conscious communion with all existence. Wow. No wonder he was taken out, And now we come to quoting from Elvis. And this was to Wanda from on one of his tapes, his conversations with her. Love comes unasked and unsolicited. It doesn't confine, condemn, or criticize. It frees and protects and uplifts the beloved. It is a gift from God to be nurtured and cared for. So many people think it is their right to own another person. That isn't love. It is possession and will not survive in times of crisis. If it were not for God, his hand on my life, I would have nothing. I believe I am doing the thing I was put here for, and hope that by my conduct and my example, somehow I can be worthy of the opportunity to be here. And then from another part of the conversation, he says, it's silly to think that we're the only life with billions of planets in the universe. This planet is obviously being monitored by superior beings to prepare us for the transition into the new age. And so I believe that will conclude my talk with you for today. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.